Hi there, this is Alison from Boomerang Pilates and AlisonCrouch.com. And today we're going to do a little bit of hip hinging and hip mobilization, which is great for people who have pelvic floor issues, great for people who have to sit a lot, people who have tight hamstrings, tight calves, low back issues, and headaches. Weirdly, headaches can be really affected by the degree of mobility we have in the lower back. So the first thing we're going to take note of is, especially if you have a job or a life where you need to sit a lot, if we sit just here, usually there's a big rounding, right? So comfy back in the chair. If you're conscious of your posture, you will tend to then clench your lower back in order to pull yourself upright, which is not good for any of the things. So I like a half dome, but you can certainly just roll up a towel or have a cushion or cushions. You want to make sure that your pelvis is able to just drape effortlessly forward so that your pelvis is on a nice flat plane, which means your pelvic floor is now on a nice flat plane. You've got some space at your sit bones and for the top of your hamstrings to open up instead of being tucked around and tight. You want to have your feet a little bit forward. If you know you tend to be tight, your feet under the chair, just the process of bringing your feet forward can be helpful. And in this position, ideally your rib cage is also able to just be level above your pelvis. Neck and shoulders relaxed. So just this, for some people, is like, oh my God, life is so much better. Do this. As an exercise, we're now going to work at mobilizing the pelvis relative to the leg bones and the lumbar spine, because those things often are very chunked up together. So you're going to plant your feet in the floor, relax your belly. It's okay, it's just us chickens here, nobody's going to care. And then push with your feet and pull with your feet in order to move your pelvis back and forth with no belly work, no back work. We're just getting everything to shift, right? So we get some nice smoothness. It opens up the space for the lower back, which is so tight for people. Allows for a nice easy fold and opening for the hip flexors, which are tight for so many people. And you can do this for a minute or two at a time. A couple of times through the course of the day would be great, especially if you know you tend to have to sit a lot. And we're looking for a nice, smooth, easy motion. So that starts to mobilize the legs in the hip socket. Then we can take a look at actual hip hinging. I've done a couple of videos, I think, about this, but we're going to put it together in this little sequence. If you can come down to your chair seat without your back tucking, that's great. That's what you're looking for. We're looking for this lengthening of the sit bones to be allowed to float towards the ceiling, so there's no ripping into the back. And if you're used to this, it's going to feel really like, woo, cigarette girl sexy. We're trying not to collapse the ribs. You want to get your ribs and your arms organized so that this is where all your support is coming from. And then your back is just hanging out and being allowed to have its natural curve while you're lengthening through the hamstrings. The reality is this is too low for most people, so maybe a little higher would be better. It's actually better, this is better for me. Or flip your chair around and lean on the back of the chair. That could work too. If you feel like you can get your hips to shift back without hyperextending your knees, right? I think we remember from previous videos, I'm a brutal knee hyperextender. Then this is fantastic. Now we're working and lengthening the hamstrings, but if you're really tight, this might be what you're working towards. And we're starting with just getting you to let go of the tops of the hamstrings. So you can play with that for a minute at a time or so. And then one of the big inhibitors for that ability to let the pelvis be untucked and neutral is tension through the calves. So you set yourself up with your half dome or your rolled up towel or whatever you use to support your foot, or that you use to support yourself on the chair. You want to position yourself so that your weight is primarily on the back of your stretching heel rather than crushing forward onto the dome. And you should be able to be upright. So I can bring this leg all the way forward, but my body hinges, right? Because I'm too tight here. So I step back. If you have nice, long, stretchy, mobile calves, then you probably can get further forward. This is my starting spot. And then you shift over and you do the same thing on the other side. So we're trying to build length through the whole distance of the back chain of your body in the way that is affecting the positioning of your pelvic floor. As you do this, you could start to think about how much pelvic floor tension are you holding, and can you let it go? How much belly tension are you holding? Can you let that go? It's culturally challenging, it's emotionally and it's kind of ego challenging, but it's so good for your tissues. So you can certainly go back and do that a couple of times on each side, adding in elements like, can you get your feet pointing straight forward? Can you get your weight even from side to side? Are you tending to lean? Right? Are you tending to go this way? Right, so I've twisted and shifted. I'm going to keep everything to center. Shift over to the other side. It's different from side to side. You'll be shocked, you've never heard me say that before. Both feet pointing forward. I'm tighter on this side, so I have to take my other foot further back. I want my pelvis to be level. I want my weight to be even. I want my pelvic floor and my belly muscles to relax. I want my shoulders to relax. I want to be happy about this process and the no peeing when you run that comes from this. And then we're going to step it up a little bit. We're going to go back to your chair. We're going to try and hinge and do your calf stretch at the same time, which might be a bit much. And so I have a little assistant here. This is my Barbie in her bathing suit. So this is Barbie in her fancy top and bathing suit. We do not approve of Barbie's shape in many, many ways. However, super helpful as an indicator for how do we actually hip hinge. This Barbie is left over from like my kids when they were very little. So this is where we hinge from. When we talk about doing a hip hinge and actually getting that length through the hamstrings attach to the sit bone and come down and attach below the knee. This motion of the pelvis moving up away from the back of the knee is what gives you your actual length through your hamstrings. This is what we're looking for. No movement in the back, no movement in the thigh, just a movement through the hip. Rather than what we tend to do, which is I'm hinging, this is as far as my hips can go, my brain thinks I'm still hinging. What I'm really doing is moving my shoulders down and starting to move into my back. So especially if you have pelvic floor stuff or back stuff or any of the things that we talked about earlier, it's important to identify that actual capacity for a hip hinge. So try getting both feet up on your half dome or your rolled up towel. I would say turn the chair around and start to hinge. So we're keeping the arms long and straight, so you're not bending down. You're sending your butt back behind you and you're trying to find that Barbie hinge spot at the hip. So your sit bones are coming up. Your pelvic heads are draping down towards the floor. Your ribs are staying intact. Keep moving your chair. Ultimately, you would do this with no chair. But for the moment, start with a little bit of support. Let your head relax. Deal with your hyperextending knees. So to deal with my hyperextending knees, I'm doing a little bit of an external rotation rather than just bending my knees, because I want them to stay nicely organized. You could even play around with a little bit of an extra knee bend and see how that feels for you. Does that give more work into the backs of your legs? It might if you're tending to be a hyperextender like myself. So now I'm feeling tons of wakefulness through my glutes and hamstrings. And I'm going to step off the half dome. I'm going to bend my knees. I'm going to let myself roll all the way down. This is comfortable for me. You would go to whatever feels comfortable to you. I'm going to breathe into the backs of my ribs. And then I'm going to exhale and I'm going to roll. So remember we rolled at the beginning, the pelvis and the lumbar spine being able to articulate relative to each other. And I'm just stacking myself up one vertebra at a time. And that would be your little pelvic floor workout for the day. So if that was interesting to you, you can check out, there's other videos down on the Boomerang channel, or you can follow the blog at AlisonCoach.com.